Hi good people, Titus here for the final video in the Chaff Grenade series, and in this one, we'll finish up the code in our character blueprint to trigger our Chaff effect. Let's jump right into it. Alright, in the last video we did the post-process effect. The last thing we did is we created this toggle on-off switch. So I'm just going to hook this back up. So now we can control this effect through our scalar parameter collection value. So we're going to go into the first person character, and under the event graph we have the begin and end starts of our custom code. So I'm going to do a few different things. I think I'm going to slow the character down, and then I'm of course going to distort their screen, and then we'll do that over some delay, and then we'll restore their movement and pull the effect off the screen. To achieve this, I'm going to need two variables. So I'll hit the plus sign here, and I'll do is Chaff question mark, and I'm going to change that to a boolean, and then I'm going to do Chaff penalty, and I'm going to change that to a float. Compile and save. I think starting off for the Chaff penalty, I think 5 seconds is a good entry point. And then all we basically need to do is at the beginning of Chaff, I'm going to want to do a branch check. So I can click into here, drag my is Chaff into the condition check. And you can get a branch just by right clicking, typing branch, or you can just hold B and left click and it'll pop a branch in. So either way. If the is Chaff is true, I don't want to do anything, so I'm not going to repeat the effect. But if it's false, I want to go ahead and do a set for is Chaff. I'm going to set it to true. I'm then going to get a reference to my character movement, and I'm going to change the max walk speed, which you can see right here is 600 centimeters per second. So I'll drag out the character movement, then drag off the pin and do set max walk speed. And then currently it's 600, so I'm going to reduce it by half. So I'll change it to 300. So Chaff starts, checks the condition. If it's false, we'll set it to true. We'll reduce the movement speed. We're then going to normally I do play sound, but because we need to be able to stop and start a sound, I'm going to do spawn sound, and spawn sound 2D is fine. Now if you remember at the beginning of the series, we imported a static sound that I got from freesound.org, so any sound will do, and this is not actually optional, you don't have to do this, but I'll choose my static effect that I found. I'm going to reduce the volume, maybe 0.3. And then on the return value, I'm going to right click and actually promote it to a variable. And I'm going to title this Chaff sound. That way I have a way to start and stop it. Now after this, I can just simply right click and do a set scalar parameter value. This one right here. Hook up the pin. The collection we're going to be modifying is our PC dataset, or whatever you named it in the previous video. The parameter value is of course alpha, or whatever you named your parameter name there. Now when the person is chaffed, this value should be 1. I'm then going to come into a delay, and this is going to be my penalty delay for how long this value is. I will drag in my chaff penalty so I can modify that, you know, just kind of, if I don't like 5 seconds, I can adjust it a little bit easier that way. And then after the penalty is done, I can run a call into chaff stop. And that basically kind of completes the chaff function. So under the chaff stop, what I want to do is I want to do a branch check. and I want to check if the player is chaffed. If the player is not chaffed, then I don't need to run this code, right? There's no point. So on the true condition, I'm going to do a set. So I'll do the is chaffed and do set. And then I'm going to set it to not true. So basically, when the player gets chaffed, it checks are they chaffed. If they're not, set chaff to true and continue the code. When chaff stop gets called, it checks are they already chaffed. If they're not, we don't need to do anything. If they are, let's go ahead and turn it off. Pretty simple. And then I'll get another reference to my character movement. I'm going to, of course, do a set max walk speed. And then just like before, we set it to 300. I'm going to set it back to 600, or the default. And then I'm going to drag out my chaff sound and do a get reference to it. And then I can pull off that pin and search for stop. And then this will actually stop playing the sound. And then once the sound stopped, I can then do a right click and do set scalar parameter value. The collection is the data set, just like we did before. We're still modifying the alpha, but this time we're setting the alpha to 0. It's pretty straightforward, right? So we set it to 1 to start the effect and 0 to stop the effect. Now this is going to be a little bit of a harsh start and stop, but I'll show you how to modify the code later to get a little bit of a smoother transition. But let's go ahead and hit play and test our code. So I believe it is the G key to throw out our grenade. Plays the effect. And you can see the trigger box. And when I enter the trigger box again, it starts and stops the effect. And then the trigger box eventually disappears. And you can see all these trigger boxes kind of around here. Now I can't penalize myself if I'm already penalized, so it doesn't reset the timer. So whatever the 5 seconds is, it'll still wear out. And that was that gameplay mechanic that I was talking about. You may want your effect to actually operate differently. And then of course, if you don't like, like the colors or the effect, you can, all these values are adjustable, right? So like you can see this one's blue, which is the demo one I had set up before, and this one's green. These values, you can always go back into your chaff effect and you can change them around, right? So if we want to do something different, try see what this looks like. Maybe do a pink. Throw out the grenade. You get this weird pink effect. If you don't like the lines, you can come down here, increase the lines to like 50, save. And you can just get all sorts of interesting effects and kind of change, how it looks. And then before I forget, we can come back into the box collider, and we originally had this show in game so we can get the good size. I think the size is good. So we can come back and check the box for hidden, compile, save, and then when we throw our grenade, it won't spawn that trigger zone so you can't see it. But you can see the effect is kind of like a little jarring. So it's not smooth like this one. I think this one eases out and in kind of gradually. Whereas this one, it's very sharp, right? Start and stop basically. So let me show you how to achieve a bit of a smooth transition into it. Let's go back to our first person character. We're gonna make some adjustments in the code. We're gonna get rid of this parameter value. We don't need it. And then we are going to drag these values back a ways, give us some room. And then I'm just going to drag off this and do, oops, timeline. And you'll see an add timeline option. And then we can just simply call it Chaff. And then you can double click to actually go in the timeline. I'm going to set it from 5 seconds just to be 1 second, because you can handle the delay or the penalty inside the timeline if you were to do this, but it's I find it's not as reliable. So I don't like to, because timelines, they're a little finicky depending on when they get called and how many times they get called. So I like to do my penalties outside of them and just execute the timeline very quickly, just to get a little bit of a smooth transition on whatever effect I'm going for. So I'm gonna set it to 1, hit a track, we'll add a float track, I'm gonna call it alpha, you can call it whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna right click, add a keyframe at 0, 0, and then I'm gonna right click, add a second keyframe at 1, 1. I can hit these 2 buttons to reframe the window so I can see my animation. And this is still very jagged. What you can do is you can right click on each one and you can choose auto, and it will smooth out the interpolation between the points. So it'll be a nice gradual effect. And this is good, so I can actually compile and save. Back in the event graph, I am going to, from play, I'm going to update this scalar parameter value. I can plug in my alpha into the parameter value here. And then it's going to continue into the delay for the chaff penalty. It'll then call chaff stop. Chaff stop runs, and it checks the Boolean, and then it sets the Boolean to false, restores the movement, stops the audio, and it needs to pull the effect off the screen. Because this is already adjusting the parameter value between 0 and 1, we can actually drag this pin and reverse it from the end. So now if I compile and save, you'll notice we should have a nice smooth transition. So it should start it, and then it should ease it off the screen. Like that. And timelines are very, very handy. You can do this for all sorts of things, like opening doors or what have you. You can also use it for animations. And then this is the demo grenade, which is blue. I hit the other trigger zone. And then here's the blue one. So yeah, post-process effects. They're a lot harder to set up initially, but I think once you get them, it's real easy to make adjustments and get some drastically different effects. So they're pretty cool. But alright everyone, this concludes the Chaff Grenade tutorial series. I hope you found the information informative. You can take maybe into your own projects. If you have any tips or alternate methods of doing any of this, please comment below, as it not only helps me, but also helps the community as well. As always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.